Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and start doing our introductions and getting our webinar started. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Roxy Moser, and I'm the Director of Immigration Services for VIMA Staffing Partners and Valley Medical Staffing. I'm going to introduce our panelists in just a moment, but before I do, I want to quickly mention that if you do have questions, we will try to address them all towards the end of our webinar. Please do answer or enter them in the Q&A section of Zoom if you don't mind. And like I said, we'll do our best to get to every one of them. And if we do not have time, you are more than welcome to follow up. And I will also try to do the same. Our email will be listed at the end of the webinar. In addition, this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel. You can share that link with anyone that might be interested. And again, thanks for attending. Okay, so today we're going to talk about retrogression and the October Visa Bulletin review. Let's see here, a little bit about our company. Many of you may know us. For those that don't, we are two recruiting and staffing agencies. That's VIMA Staffing Partners and Valley Medical Staffing. We've been companies since 2003. We work primarily or only with acute care facilities in the US, in California, and other states like Minnesota. We are a certified ethical healthcare recruiter with the CGFNS Alliance for Ethical International Recruitment Practices, and we're also certified ethical recruiters and members of the American Association of International Healthcare Workforce in the AAIHR. As well as, of course, we have our gold seal of approval from the Joint Commission. Currently, we're in the process of recertification for CGFNS. You may have seen that on our website, but we are proud to hold those distinctions as being a fair and ethical recruiter. Today, we have our three panelists. We've got CEO and Managing Partner Michael Conley. He is, of course, CEO and Managing Partner of VIMA and Valley. Attorney Michael Hammond, he is the main attorney for Corporate Immigration Partners, and his paralegal, Sarah Sheets, who's a case manager for many of your cases and those who may also join us, and she works also at Corporate Immigration Partners. Thanks again. We're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, Mike Hammond, I'm going to let you take it from here. Can you discuss the Visa Bulletin and retrogression?
Okay, thanks, Roxy. The reason why this is an important Visa Bulletin, the October Visa Bulletin compared to other bulletins, is because it's the first Visa Bulletin of the new fiscal year. So the U.S. government's fiscal year starts on October 1st and runs through September 30th of the following year. So the Visa Bulletin that's issued in October tells us what's happening in October, but also gives us kind of a preview of what's going to happen throughout the rest of the year. So there are two charts that are issued in the Visa Bulletin. The first one is the final action date chart. And if you are an overseas and offshore nurse, so you're right now listening to us from offshore, this is the most important bulletin for you. And you'll note that the date moved to November 15th, 2022. Essentially, all of the retrogression that we had during the summer, which is typical, was basically recaptured outside of 1 week. So the furthest the Visa Bulletin got last year was November 22nd before it backed up, retrogressed, and now we're back to November 15th, 2022. So if you or someone offshore who had an interview, say in the summer or even the spring, and your case was not, Visa was not approved because maybe you needed medical exams or they had a 221G question or something like that, and your priority date is now prior to November 15th, 2022, you can expect adjudication, frankly, within the next 60 to 90 days. Now, a quick little caveat there just for a second to kind of interject in case there's anyone on this call that is new to this space. A priority date is your spot in the queue, your spot in the line. A priority date is given to you when you have an I-140 filed for you. So if I were to file, for example, a case for you today on October 3rd, whatever today's date is, and it's received by the government tomorrow, October 4th, your priority date, your spot in the queue would be October 4th, 2024. So it's just your spot in the queue. There's a second chart that comes out in the Visa Bulletin, and that is called the date for filing chart. And you'll see that date, again, in the EB3 category, which is the RN category, has moved forward to March 1st, 2023. Now, for those of you who are in the US and have not yet filed a 485, your I-140 has already been filed. What this chart means is that if you were filed before March 1st, 2023, you can now file your I-485. And the filing of the I-45 also lets you file the I-765 and the 131, which are work cards and travel documents. So that's the key date for you. Now, a little bit of information that we'll talk specifically about some of the impact on offshore and onshores is the October Visa Bulletin has now established these two dates. So we've got a date for filing of March 1st, 2023, final action date of November 2022. What this tells us is that the Department of State believes that during the course of this fiscal year, they will be able to adjudicate and actually approve everybody up to March 1st, 2023. So generally speaking, the date for filing chart, think of it as the goal out here in the future, and the final action date starts here at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then slowly through the fiscal year, it kind of moves up and catches up with it. That's the general concept. So if you're someone who's sitting offshore and you have a priority date in, say, January of 2023, you can expect and reasonably rely on the fact that you're going to have an interview with this fiscal year and actually be adjudicated and issued an immigrant visa. Now, the fiscal year sounds like a long time because it's obviously a year, goes till next September. However, the reality is the Department of State typically uses up all of the visas within the first, say, 6 to 7 months of the fiscal year. The reason why they do that is our government system is based upon a use it or lose it. So the immigrant visas that are issued each year, if they're not passed out by the end of the fiscal year, they're wasted. So we get 140,000 a year. We want 140,000 issued. We like it when the system works well. What that means is that instead of having this slowly spread out and move forward over a period of 4 quarters, it likely is really moving over a course of about 6-7 months at the most. So most of the interviews and everything are going to take place between now and, say, May of next year. And then we typically see retrogression again, and then it repeats itself again in October. So some practical things for offshore RNs. Again, if you have a priority date prior to March 1st, 2023, you can expect an interview and expect to be adjudicated. And I expect it would likely occur within the first 6-7 months of the year. If you had a priority date after March 1st, 2023, it might move forward, and we'll talk about some predictions here in a little bit, but you cannot count on it like an individual who, say, has a January 2023 date. Now, for the US-based cases, okay, March 1st, 2023, last year we got to February 1st, 2023, so it did not move forward very far. It only moved a month. And likely, they rarely move the date forward in a given fiscal year. They did last year by about a month. The year before they didn't. So it varies a little bit. And again, we'll talk in a little bit about what some possibilities are. But if you have a priority date after March 1st, 2023, and you're here in the US, you should not expect to file your 485 until next October. The bulletin's released and we see what those dates are like. So it's possible they'll move forward, but you certainly can't count on them like the offshore nurses. Now, let's look at this big picture. If I'm offshore again, I'm looking at it right now and I'm saying today's basically October 1st, and they're processing November of 2022, which tells me that my overall path to get to the US from the time my I-140 is filed until the time I'm going to get an interview is right around 2 years. Now, I think it's probably a touch bit longer than that, but it's in that neighborhood. So 2, and let's be a little conservative and say 2.5 years, I think is a fair figure for offshore candidates. And I think we can expect to kind of stay around in that neighborhood for the year. Now, for US candidates, as a practical matter, for those of you who were summer, say 2023 grads, you graduated May of 2023. So your I-140 got filed in, say, June or July of 2023. Your OPT was up this past summer, and now you've enrolled back in a master's program and you're doing your CPT. You should expect to stay in that program and in that CPT until at least October 2025. I would not expect any movement for that. So you're looking at a little over 2 years before you're able to file a 485. That is my likely guess. Okay. Next, so some possibilities to address. So let's talk about some things that could happen, okay? First of all, some legislation could happen, okay? There is a bill, something called the Healthcare Worker Resiliency Act, and there's a variety of variations, but that's the one most people have heard about. And it would basically take a certain number of immigrant visas for certain RNs and doctors and basically exempt you from the quota. And the number varies. There was a version that had 25,000 and I think 15 for the docs. And then there was a version that had 50,000 combined. But the bottom line is there's going to be some number that would be exempt from the quota. That would be a huge benefit because then everybody up to that number would become current immediately. So at the front of the line immediately. Now, we got very, very close to having that attached to a border bill in December of 2023. It obviously did not happen, but this is the kind of bill that could be attached to another border bill. And if you follow US politics any right now, both candidates running for president have promised a border bill. Vice President Harris has promised a border bill. Even she'll sign the Republican border bill, she said. President Trump obviously wants a border bill. We don't know what his will look like, but wants a border bill. Those are the best case scenarios to attach a bill to. And frankly, for purposes of this act, it doesn't matter who gets elected president. Either one have said, I want a border bill. This would be an attachment. So the fact that two presidential candidates promise a border bill does not mean we're getting a border bill, but it certainly means that there's at least some hope out there. And with the hope of a border bill means there's the hope of getting something like this attached to it. So that's one thing that's a potential. And I think if we're going to see something, I don't think we'll see it during any lame duck session that occurs after the election before the new Congress is sworn in January. But that's always a possibility. But it's likely going to be one of the 100-day initiatives, which means that probably by this time in April, June of next year, we'll have an idea if this is going to go or not. Okay. So that's one thing.
Mike,
that's a direct relief to you.
Can I interject and ask a quick clarification question regarding the HWRA? Should it get passed, does that quota of visas work for both consular and for US grads? Okay. Yes,
it would work for anyone that is a Schedule A I-140 applicant. And historically, they defined it based upon Schedule A I-140, which included both RNs and PTs. The latest version of the bill included RNs only. Yes. Second possibility, that's a direct relief. RNs need help, we're going to give help to RNs. There's also what we would call indirect relief. So there is a discussion, and it is some proposals that have been put forth previously by the Obama administration, also put forth by the prior Trump administration, and it's something that we believe that Vice President Harris would support, which is to take and remove U.S. master's and PhD grads from the STEM programs out of the quota. And so it doesn't look like it would do anything for you as an RN because you're not a U.S. master's grad or a PhD grad. However, what it would do is let's pretend there's a line and there's 100,000 people in the line. If all of a sudden 40,000 people get moved out of the line, you get to move forward wherever you're at in the line. So taking people out of the line is an indirect positive thing for us that would result in some relief. Another thing that could provide us some relief is policy changes. Right now, you need to have a priority date current under the date for filing chart in order to file your 45 and get your EAD card. There is a discussion at the USCIS policy level about changing that so that when you have an I-140 approved, you would be able to file a 485 and get an EAD. You would not be adjudicated until you were current under the final action date chart, but you would be allowed to file. And there's a lot of reasons why that is favorably looked upon by the USCIS because it's basically a acceleration of the payment of fees for them. And so it's a revenue generation for them. And they're always looking for ways to generate revenue because the USCIS is not ran off of tax dollars. It's ran off of filing fees. They do not have any tax dollars. Filing fees only supports that entire program. So anytime they can get extra money, so they like the idea, we'll see if something like that happens, but it's certainly discussed.
Mike,
yeah.
Question regarding that, the filing, should that actually be a policy change, which is yet to be determined? Would that mean the policy may change such that you could also file an I-765 for a work permit at that time?
Yes. Anytime you can file a 485, you can also file for the 765 work permit and the 131 travel document. So basically,
okay, so that would relieve some of the time frame of these nurses working in the U.S. And not necessarily having to keep their F1 status.
That is right. That's right.
Okay.
Another policy change that is being discussed is a policy change outside of the USCIS that is being reviewed by the Department of Education, which is to include BSN RNs as part of the STEM list. And if they did, then that would give you a 2-year STEM extension after your OPT expires after 1 year. Again, it's not being looked at by USCIS because it's not their list. It's the Department of Education's that ultimately drives that list. It kind of goes to the Department of Labor as well, but it's primarily Department of Education. And there are quite a few hospitals that have banded together and other organizations to try to make that happen. That list historically has only been updated maybe 3 times in the last 9 years. So it does not get updated regularly. It's used for things outside of immigration. But at least it's something that's being discussed. And keep in mind, there are efforts being made by organizations. Roxy mentioned at the beginning of the call, some of the organizations that Valley and VEMA are certified by and gold members of. And it's organizations like that that are pushing for relief for RNs to make the path to the U.S. and actually start working more seamless and without as many hurdles and obstacles. Now, right now, the reality is, though, if you are a U.S. grad and you're joining Valley or VEMA or frankly anyone else on your OPT, you will not get to the front of the line by the time that OPT expires. There will be a gap. And the best way to solve that gap is through a U.S. master's program and first day CPT, until that gap is. So the idea of, well, maybe retrogression will get better and the date will move faster, it's not. There's a supply and demand out there. We know what the dates are. We know what the volume looks like. So there is a gap. Expect that that's just part of the process now. You graduate, you pass your NCLEX, you get a job, you start working, you've got your OPT EAD, it's good for a year. At the end of that year, you're going to go to grad school and get your first ACPT, and then your priority date's going to come correct. That's kind of the way the process works as it is today. And we've just got to kind of get used to the fact that that's how it operates. And again, we can talk about changes and hope things are changed, but that is our reality as we live right now. Okay, predictions for 2025. There are certainly reasons why the priority dates could move forward. Okay, I do think it's safe to say what we've already looked at, which is the March 1st, 2023, that we're going to get to that. We typically do. Not always, but typically. Does it move further than that? If I were to sit here and tell you it's going to, I'd be lying. I have no idea. It's a crystal ball, and I don't have a crystal ball. If it is, it's probably murky and cracks in it, and I don't know, maybe even some mud covering it. So it would not be a good crystal ball to use. Any agency telling you, hey, it's only going to be 12 months, or I can get here in 18 months, unless you have an old priority date that you can recapture, you're not. It's not real. So don't believe it. Don't believe the stuff people are selling when they're not being truthful to you as to how long it's taking. So if you're offshore, think of this as simply, will have no effect on your ability to get here, no effect on your ability to be approved and ultimately come to the U.S. and start working. So all the things that you can control, you want to control, whether it's making sure you've got your visa screen and passed your English test, making sure that you're staying in a bedside role if you can, those kinds of things, all the things you can control. When the National Visa Center is ready to move forward in your case, move forward. Those kinds of things are good to do, but it's not a total block. It's simply a delay. And again, we've talked a little about U.S. Some things that could happen that would allow things to move forward a little faster are generally what we would call negative things that result in positive consequences. For example, the USCIS has traditionally not required interviews for all 485 applicants. That was a requirement under the Trump administration. There is a thought that it might be brought back if he is elected. If he is elected and the 485 interviews come back, then that will mean that there are the 485s will take longer to process, which will mean that they'll probably move the date forward because the consulates already have interviews and the consulates will be able to handle that. So we could get some forward movement, but again, it's very unlikely. Okay, so that's kind of my overview of things.
Sure.
Couple other just super quick things to keep in mind, because we now kind of have an idea. For those of you looking to take an overseas assignment, you're in the Philippines right now, and you've got a priority date of fall of 2024, and now you have some idea that you're not coming in this next year, then I think it's a good time to talk to Roxy and your team there at Valley and Vima and talk to them about what the assignment looks like and how long it's going to last and what consulate that's going to be at and things like that. Those of you who are single that were looking to get married, you got some extra time now. You got some time to go find someone that you really like, not the one your mom's trying to set you up with. Okay, so there are some things that you can do during this time frame. Okay, that's kind of my scoop on stuff. Roxy.
Okay, thank you, Mike, so much. I do want to ask Michael Conley, what kind of advice might you give both a U.S. stateside RN and a consular overseas RN that are interested in working with us and may choose to sign on now or very soon? What kind of advice can you give them about how to manage the length of time that it might take to get their visa and green card?
Be patient. It's simple as that. You just have to be. This is not the first time that we've had to deal with retrogression, and it won't be the last time we've had to deal with retrogression. I mean, we were having people it was taking 8 years for them to get through back in the early 2000s. So this is, 2.5 years, maybe. That's manageable. We always like to say that, retrogression is both a curse and a gift. It's a curse because it's going to take a while, and you have your hopes and your dreams and your goals, and you want everything to go fast. We get that, but it's also a blessing because it allows you to do the things that Mike was talking about earlier, which is getting all your ducks in a row, get your English testing done, get your visa screen done. If you do have an opportunity, if you're get in a case that's getting filed today, and you're not going to be here for 2.5 years, this is the time to consider going to another country and getting that additional bedside experience, getting experience working in a different culture, so that you are comfortable, moving in the world, because your chance will come. But this is a time to better yourself and your skills and better prepare you to come to the United States and be successful. For onshore folks who are waiting for I-485s, Michael already went through the process. You're not going to get your work permit before OPT expires. It's not going to happen. And so you are definitely going to need to get involved with a master's program of some sort. If you don't have a BSN, you're kind of stuck. Now would be the time to look for an ADN to BSN program that you could get into. And there's some of them out there that allow you to work part-time during that period. If you have a BSN, or even if you have a bachelor's degree from your home country, you will want to get into a CT program. Right now, we're affiliated with a school that does a master's in nursing, and it's a remote program, so it works really well. You can work and go to school at the same time. You only have to travel to the campus twice a year for a weekend, and it gives you the opportunity to work full time, stay in status, and wait out the USCIS, because that's where we are now. We're just waiting out. But having a MSN is a really great thing to have on CV, and you'll end up getting paid more over time, and give you opportunities for advancement down the road. So again, it's a curse and a blessing.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'd like to open it up to some questions. We do have a few here, just for the audience. If you have any other questions, please enter them into the Q&A section of Zoom. I'm sure some of the questions that are being asked are common. So, for instance, to get started, maybe Mike Hammond, you can take this one. We've had a couple questions specifically about dates, and you did just cover this, but maybe let's go through that exercise again. The question was from Brian. My PD is May 2023, DQ'd in December of 23. When should I expect my priority date to become current? Mike, of course, go through those numbers or those dates, but also maybe you could mention what it means to be DQ'd and what kind of a process, even though you're at that level, what will happen next?
Yeah. Well, first of all, May 2023, I find it extremely unlikely, if not, will not happen this fiscal year. So I believe the earliest you could look at is the next fiscal year. So we're talking sometime October 2025 and beyond, before you would become current. As far as what DQ means, I, for the longest time, thought that meant Dairy Queen, which is a soft serve ice cream place here in the Midwest and the South. And that's all I thought. And then Sarah explained to me that that's not what it means. It has something to do with the National Visa Center, and then you getting all your paperwork in time and everything being complete. And I guess technically it stands for documentarily qualified, which is a really big phrase. I'm not even sure documentarily is a word, but I guess it is. And it basically means you're ready for an interview. But the most important part to be ready for an interview is to actually have a current priority date. They're not interviewing anyone that doesn't have a current priority date. So being DQ'd is important, but I do not think it's going to move you further. Now, the second person who had a similar question, except the date's March 31st, 2023, we're right now at March 1st. So you're within 30 days of where we're at now for this fiscal year. I think there is a possibility that you could get, if the dates move forward any at all, a month, you're there. So you're really close. You're on the edge. So I would find it more likely that you would be current this fiscal year. And if not, I think then clearly come next October. But I would say there's, some shot for you this year. I would be looking at the visa bulletins every month if I'm you. The May person, probably not. I probably wouldn't look at them every month.
Mike, just to clarify, the March 31st, 2023, which is close to the dates for filing chart of March 1st, 2023. This is in reference your priority date becoming current for a consular processed individual.
Correct. Yeah, because it's the same.
Yeah. Oh, well, and of course filing for I-485, but that
yeah, if they happen to be here in the US, but either one. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Candace writes, I graduated in 2011, but have not practiced bedside nursing yet. I passed NCLEX and have IELTS already. Are there any opportunities? Mike Conley, I'd like you to take that question.
Yeah. First off, Candace, congratulations on passing NCLEX and IELTS. Your overall band score is actually really great. So that's good stuff. The one thing you're missing, and you already know, is you don't have any bedside experience. So, a lot of companies would not be interested in talking to you without any bedside experience, but we've hired people without bedside experience because we understand it's going to take 2.5 years for you to get here. If you do go with somebody like us and we're willing to, put the effort into getting you here, you have an obligation, and your obligation is to spend the next 2.5 years working as a nurse at the bedside. And I'll be very blunt, U.S. hospitals do not want to have people who don't have any experience. There's no benefit to them. They're willing to work with, new grads, who need I-485s because they've been educated in the United States. They have U.S. clinicals, and, they're going to be going through just a normal new grad process. But for somebody who's coming in from overseas, absolutely have to have bedside experience. So my advice, get a job, start working as a nurse, work in the highest acuity setting you can at the most modern hospital you can. As I mentioned earlier, you have, 2.5 years before you're going to get here. That's an opportunity for you to go overseas somewhere else if you can find that job. But you most certainly have to start working as an RN as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Mike Hammond, Ricardo's question about, are they still doing quarterly limit movement of the dates?
Good question. Ricardo, this means that you are someone who either attends a lot of these webinars or you spend a lot of time reading stuff on the internet. So good question. So last year, the Department of State, who, by the way, went through a change at the leadership of who controlled the visa bulletin. It had been controlled by the same person, a guy named Charlie Oppenheimer. For those of you who are in the Philippines, Charlie did a monthly chat show called Charlie's Chat Corner or something like that for years, and was very popular, and people loved it, and he was funny, and he did a great job. He retired, and they brought in a new person. And the new person, who's not nearly as funny and doesn't do those same chats, at least not with any sense of humor, said they're going to do quarterly movements because they thought that would be more predictable. And sure, maybe it is more predictable. I don't know. But this year in October, when they came out, they did not include any reference to that whatsoever. So a bunch of us think that maybe they've decided they're not going to do quarterly. But it wouldn't surprise me if we do, which what that means is a practical matter is we shouldn't be freaked out if it doesn't move again until January, because the quarter will be October, November, December. Then notice I have to count on my fingers in order to get there. And then January would be the next quarter. So if Ricardo's right and they do quarterly again, it won't move again till January. But we prior to this last year, we've seen it almost every month.
Great, good question. Thank you. I see Candace had a follow-up. We just spoke about Candace and bedside experience. Mike, what kind of roles is VIMA and Valley hiring for? In particular, she's asking about opportunities for LTC and SNF.
Oh, that's me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Candace has
Spaced
questions
out there
about
for a second.
opportunities and the types of roles.
There are opportunities. Currently, our company is working exclusively with acute care facilities, but that doesn't mean it will forever. We're going to hopefully be, starting to offer some new and exciting things here in the next couple of months. And part of that might be opportunities in long-term care and skilled nursing. But right now, we're not doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving to a question from Christina Brown. Hi, Christina. Does marriage affect an already filed I-140 for a U.S. grad? Mike Hammond.
Well, yeah, I mean, marriage is hell, right? So it's a wonderful thing. So yeah, it affects it. If your spouse is in the United States, okay, and you married someone who also is a international, who's on some other visa status, and when your 485 priority date becomes current, they can simply file with you. The fact that they were not included on your I-140 doesn't mean anything at all, okay? Totally fine. If they are overseas and they do not have a way to come here to the US on some visa that allows them outside of a visitor's visa, then your I-140 and 45 will have to be approved before you can bring them here. And then it's a process called fall to join. And that's a long process. So hopefully they're here in the US. If they're not, hopefully you're not that committed to them. You could just trade them in for someone else, someone who's here. But otherwise, you're going to have a big, long gap to get them here, probably 2, 3, 4 years kind of time frame.
Thanks, Mike. Christina, congratulations are in order for sure.
That's what I meant to say. I meant to start with that. Sorry.
Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can comment here. This question does come up quite a bit for our nurses, which is when they do get married after they've had a petition filed, how should they reach out to you folks at Corporate Immigration Partners for the next step?
Yeah, so we will need your marriage certificate, your spouse's birth certificate, and their passport. And then once you have the welcome letter from the NVC, we will be able to add them at that time. And we will get a fee bill for them. And then we can pay your fee bill, their fee bill, and then start the NVC process.
And if they are a U.S. grad here stateside?
Like Mike said, if the I-140 is already filed, then we don't really need to do anything until the I-45 stage.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, so we do have a couple more questions here coming through about priority dates and when they might become current. I believe these are for consular process folks, but just to reiterate, right now, Mike, anyone in the fiscal year of October 2024 to October 2025, can you tell us again where you think the priority date will become current for those consular processed folks?
Yeah, I think it'll get through the date for filing chart, which is March 1st, 2025. 3. That's the only thing I believe for sure will happen. So anybody in April, May, June 2023 and beyond, not likely this year.
Okay.
Possible, but not likely.
Thank you. So if you have a priority date before then, you may have an opportunity for your interview to come up.
I would say not just a may, I think it is a pretty sure thing, a very great likelihood of getting an interview within the next 6 to 7 months.
Great. That's good news. Let's see. I have Lou here asking a very good question about wanting to pursue a master's degree in the US, but has a visa filed, a pending EB3 visa petition. Mike Hammond, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's difficult, if not impossible, to get an F1 visa, which is a student visa, issued to come into the US to go to school if you already have an I-140 filed. The reason why is because an F1 student visa is what's considered a non-immigrant intent visa. I don't intend to stay and live in the US. I intend to come in and go to school or visit my family, visitor's visa, and return. Whereas when you file an I-140, you are indicating immigrant intent. So if you do not have an I-140 filed yet, I would probably try to get the F1 visa first, come to the US, enroll in school, and go through the program that way, filing an I-140 after you've graduated, after you got your OPT, et cetera, as opposed to filing the EB3 first. I just don't think you're going to get an F1 visa.
Hey,
Mike, can I ask you a question as well regarding that and the piggyback on that? Because I think our next Jessica has a similar question. But if someone were to come here right now and go directly into a F1 master's program, they'd be eligible to work under that CPT program and get their cases filed for them at that same time as well. Just to follow up, it would be a challenge because they would have a 2 years master's program, maybe 3 years if they're lucky, and they would still possibly be facing an issue with not being in status in time to get their I-485 filed.
Correct, because if they came in and started working on CPT during their master's program, as soon as they exceed 1 year of work, they lose the right to an OPT. So you're right. And they wouldn't even have 2 full years because you couldn't file an I-140 immediately after you came to the US as a student. You'd need to wait at least 90 days. I would probably wait a whole semester, which means you're really then going to only have about 1.5 years of priority date movement before you graduate with your master's. And so I think you'd probably have a gap of at least 1 year, maybe not.
So you'd have to most likely get into another master's program.
Yeah, exactly. And whether you could do that and they'd give you CPT again, maybe, you know, it works well. The BSN to the MS, maybe not as much with because you get that whole extra year of working. And so that adds up a lot. Yeah. So
thank you.
Possible, but tough.
thank you both.
Jessica's question is about being a tourist visa and then entering a master's program. It is possible to change your status from a visitor to a student, but generally speaking, unless you have disclosed to the consulate that the reason you're applying for a visitor's visa is to come into the US to visit a bunch of different schools because you want to go to school in the US, and they annotate that in your file, it is often very difficult to get an F1 change of status approved. It's not impossible. Some do get approved, but not very many. And the risk you take is that if that change of status is denied, you are already in school most schools will let you start, but you've already paid all your tuition. And then if that's denied, you have no recourse but to immediately leave the US. So you've lost all your money that you paid in for that schooling, and you're not getting to do the schooling. First day CPT would be very unlikely in a program like that until you're already in F1 status. Most employers would not hire you under that type of CPT because it's not a guaranteed CPT because you're not really on an F1 yet. So no one wants to start you working and you only work 3 months and they have to pull you off. So generally speaking, changing from a tourist to a master's is not usually a good approach.
Thank you. Mike Conley, Candace's follow-up question, please, if you would address it regarding
Sure.
when to start bedside and when we might sponsor visas.
Yeah, I mean, Candace, if you started working or plan on starting work soon, we would certainly speak with you. No two ways about it. The more time you have working at the bedside before you reach out to us, the better, obviously, so that we can see that your intent is real. And I'll tell you, we've had a couple of people who said that they were going to go and get their bedside experience, and then they, get their priority date comes current, they're getting ready to go to the embassy interview, and they haven't been in bedside, and it's at that point in time it puts us in a very, very difficult situation because you're going to come to the United States and, quite frankly, not do well, and not doing well doesn't help you, doesn't help us, it doesn't help the hospital, it doesn't help your patients. So again, it's a requirement, but if you're showing us that you are diligently working towards getting that experience, absolutely we want to talk to you. Based on some of that other stuff you already mentioned, you sound like you'd be a great candidate. So definitely we'd like to talk to you.
Mike, also, Candace did have one more follow-up regarding advanced career advancement programs and scholarships. Interested in particular about a specialty in geriatric nursing. When a nurse does arrive, how might that work for that type of career advancement?
It's if you come on a staffing model, you're really you're kind of at the whim of the hospital, and they're not going to be that interested. They have a special need for you. That's what they're hiring you for. These are the kinds of things that you can work on while you have the next 2.5 years if you want to specialize in geriatric nursing. I would advise, though, if you're planning to come to the United States, plan on ICU, emergency department, telemetry. Those are the positions that are needed currently. If you want to become a geriatric nursing specialist, do it when you get to the United States. And there are programs available. Our company does not offer scholarships for that kind of training. But there's ways that you can do it once you're here. But don't waste your time doing it right now, because I don't have a single client that's looking for a geriatric nurse.
Thank you, Mike. Arang, I want to say hello. Good to see you here on this call. Arang has a question about their priority date, which is February 6th of 2023, which means that will likely become current in the next fiscal year. The question, Mike Hammond, is how long will the visa processing time take once that becomes current, assuming we're at the DQ stage, from DQ to interview to being able to arrive in the US? Can you give a ballpark?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that February is near the end of the fiscal year, which means we can expect it probably sometime late second quarter, early third quarter, which puts us in about April, May kind of time frame where you would become current. The consulate in Montreal, normally once someone becomes current, within about 60 days, you could expect an interview. Now, keep in mind, with a date like that, if we're talking you don't become current until May, And then it takes them 2 months to get you scheduled an interview. You're in July and the dates may have retrogressed. So you may be one of the individuals who gets an interview but doesn't get actually approved until October. But I think it's fair to say Montreal's a good consulate. We have not had any issues with Montreal. They tend to move fairly quickly, but you're definitely not going to get an interview the week after your date becomes current. They just don't operate that way. So I would say you're probably already DQ'd, and we'll just monitor closely. And we'll see a lot of the consulates are changing how they're scheduling interviews. There have been quite a few trial cases in a lot of different consulates around the world to let's try this, and it's still not uniform. We're not expecting to go uniform this year, but we are expecting some different policies to roll out this year that are going to be a little more self-serve. For example, if you're someone and you're eligible for an interview in April and your kids are in school and you're not planning on moving to the US till June, maybe you don't want an April interview, And so they're recognizing that a little more and kind of leaving it to individuals to schedule their own interviews. So I think we got to keep that in mind. But I do think you'll be current this year.
Great, thank you. That's good news. Let's see, Christina, just to follow up really quickly about your name change and marriage. I would just ask that you do reach out to us at VIMA and Valley and the team at CIP so that they can provide the answer for your name change, but we'll provide you guidance for where to file for that once you're ready to do so.
Yeah. And Christina, it looks like you said your spouse, you married someone who's a US citizen. So you should probably reach out to us and see where you're at in the process. It is likely going to be faster for you to switch paths and go through marriage to a US citizen and get out of the priority date retrogression queue, because there is no queue for US citizens. That doesn't mean it's immediate. The process still takes several years, but it's still much faster than a regular EB3 or EB2 or EB1 even category. So reach out if you're a Valley VIMA employee, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to try to help you out, or at least point you in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Mike. At this time, folks, I just want to mention we're gonna close out here in just a couple minutes. So before we proceed with just one or two more questions, on the screen you'll see our email, which is careers@vmstaffing.com, and you can also visit the VIMA website at vimastaffingpartners.com. Certainly, if you're already a VIMA or Valley nurse, feel free to reach out to me or Careers for any questions or updates, or of course to Sarah, and we'll make sure to direct anything we can't answer ourselves to Mike and his team there. If you're interested in working with VIMA and Valley, please go ahead and apply with your resume. On the website, there's a portal very quickly to do a digital application, and one of our team members will reach out to you as soon as they possibly can for an initial call. So thank you for everyone who's attended. Mike, I think Clinton has a question here about Minnesota. He is requesting information about what's going on with our hospital client in that state.
That's it's a real disappointment for us, Clinton. I can't tell you. Our client, it's a big hospital system, and they told us to recruit new grads. They had a change in upper management. They brought in a new vendor management company, and they changed the ground rules on us in the middle. Unfortunately, they never were completely honest with us about what direction we were heading. They told us just to keep people, going through the process, and eventually they would start doing interviewing. But in the last couple months, they've decided that they do not want to move forward with the staffing of new grads. We're hoping that we're going to have a new program with this facility in the next week or two. I can't announce formally yet, but it will provide opportunities for new grads such as yourself to go through a sponsorship process, get your green card, and work with this system, and get advanced through the acuity ladder while working there. So I just, I'm very disappointed by how this shook out. We've tried to be as transparent as possible when we were getting led on. But we're at a point now where we're very close to having something put together that I think will probably make you happier than working, as a travel nurse. Because right now, I mean, I think it's great you're doing travel nursing, you're getting great experience. But our job is, we're going to try and fix what's broken in Minnesota right now and get you taken care of. So thanks for your patience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question, Clinton, and thanks for hanging in there with us. Last question I'm going to address today, and before I do, I just want to say thank you to Michael Conley of Valley and Vima, Michael Hammond and Sarah Sheets of Corporate Immigration Partners. You guys are fantastic. Folks out there do know that we do plan on doing these every few months, so we'll update you with as much information as we have. And again, you're more than welcome to reach out to us with any questions in between. And this webinar will be posted on our YouTube station within the next day or so. Last question, folks, this is a really good one for a US based international nurse studying. Aisha asks, how soon should a US senior year student reach out for new grad positions? Mike Conley, would you take that one for us?
I would say probably 3 months at least before graduation, just so that you can start, your job search. Because it'll take a little bit of time for you to find an opportunity that makes sense for you. So you want to make sure that you can get something in your back pocket before you graduate. You want to have the job lined up as best you can before you take NCLEX, because you're going to want to put all your energy towards passing NCLEX. Without NCLEX, none of this other stuff matters. So try and deal with all of the work stuff early, so that you can really focus on NCLEX and get that done, because as soon as that happens, things can move very fast.
Great.
I do want to make one comment though, Roxy, about new grads. Post-pandemic, the demand for new grads has really, really tightened. It's dropped a lot. And a lot of our clients are just like, we're not interested. We don't need new grads. We can get our own new grads, blah, blah, blah. But I think the worm's beginning to change a little bit. We're turning a little bit now, and we're beginning to see that there's a greater demand for nurses out there. It's been a really weird couple of years with regards to nursing in the United States and the demand. So, we always tell our new grads, just hold on, do what you need to do to stay in status, because you don't want to jeopardize that. And, there will be good things for you in the future. We just all need to be patient as the workforce demand for nurses in the United States gets back to where it needs to be. And it's just going to take another, 6 to 12 months, I think, as we move through time. What do you think,
Great.
Mike? You agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Certainly there has been less interest in new grads in the last 6 months than what we saw 2 years ago, for example.
Yeah, but we're hoping to turn that around.
Okay, great. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a good afternoon, and thank you to our panelists. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Roxy.
Bye-bye.
Take care,
Guys.
folks. Bye-bye.